Thank you for staying. Time now for us to get into the papers, and we're joined by Suleiman Abrahima, Executive Director, Media Foundation for West Africa. He'll be with us shortly. But I have this morning the Daily Graphic, the Ghanaian Times newspaper, Daily Guide, the Finder, Economy Times, among a host of other newspapers that we're going to be taking a look at. Let me just try to see whether we have Suleiman Abrahima on board. And mind you, the news review is brought to you by Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. I'll be telling you a bit more about them as the news review goes on. Mr. Abrahima, a very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Ben. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure having you. How are you doing this week as we start another one? It's a Monday.
Well, it's been quite some 2 days of rest, and so I look forward to a positive week, even though the situation sometimes makes it difficult to envisage a positive situation. But I think all in all, we just have to have hope and keep going.
Have hope and keep going. There's a whole lot to talk about, but I'd like to start off on the international front because, like we know, Nigeria is Africa's biggest democracy in terms of population. And whatever happens there has to be of interest to us, especially as we're close neighbors. And we have very good ties all the way from the 1960s, even before that. But especially after our independence, a few years later, they're gaining independence as well. What do you make of their electoral process so far since Saturday? The elections started. In some areas, there were delays by about 3+ hours as WTO boss Dr. Ngozi made mention of when she went to vote. People were in the queue. There was a large voter turnout among the youth. There was talk that if that happened, likely Peter Obi, who has been known to be anti-graft, very strict, very firm, could win. But that representative of the Labour Party has come out to say things are not going well. The burning of ballot boxes, intimidation. I saw a video of this woman who had been slashed across the face, who still insisted on voting. It's been said that the process has been fraught with so many problems, but the INEC says it has it all together. Your quick reflection on what's going on in Nigeria.
Well, elections in Nigeria, as you said, is really a critical one, not just for that country, but also for Africa. It is the biggest democracy, 94 million registered voters, with about 87 million people having obtained their voter cards that enables them to vote. And remember, that's about 3 times the total population of Ghana, not the total registered population, but the total population. If you're looking at the total registered population in Ghana for voting purposes, then you are talking about 6 times the number on Ghana's electoral roll. So that's really a massive one. Over the years, efforts have been made in Nigeria to sort of improve the conditions from one election to the other. But it appears that the problems persist. And for me, it is not surprising because even before elections, we all keep reading and hearing about developments in the northeastern part of Nigeria, in certain northern states with Boko Haram and the frequent attacks and all of that. And therefore, you would expect that a situation or a process like this that involves people coming out in numbers and in droves would certainly present an opportunity for those who are already looking for, minor opportunities to cause mayhem and violence. And so what is happening in some parts of Nigeria, very, very unfortunate, but I would say not too surprising, even though steps could have been taken to prevent such a situation. My expectation would have been that for a country like this, yes, you don't want to have any sort of interference, any sort of foreign involvement and all of that. But given the size and the issues of Nigeria, it would have been ideal if ECOWAS, for example, had mobilized to say, look, for this kind of elections, we need not just observers, civilian observers, but we need to beef up security. And therefore, we are mobilizing maybe additional troops, whether it's police and the military from other countries, to come in and help so that we can have an incident-free election. And of course, maybe that was prevented or avoided because of the whole thing about foreign involvement and interference and all of that. So, be it as it may, we're just hoping that things will go on smoothly because it is early days yet. The results are yet to be declared, and whether people accept or not accept is another matter. But we just all hope and pray that things will go well. At the end of the day, a new president would have been elected, and Nigeria will stay safe and united, so that we keep going. Because when Nigeria coughs, when Nigeria sneezes, we all cough because of its sheer size, the relationship with other countries, and particularly here in West Africa. Peter Obi, whether he wins or not, has brought a very, very important dynamics to elections in Nigeria. And the other day I was saying that I hope that 2024 Ghana would also have its own Peter Obi, so that it wouldn't be the usual thing of taking things for granted, NPP, NDC, or in Nigeria, APC, PDP. Even if he doesn't win these elections, I think that he stands a chance of becoming president in the near future in Nigeria. So, good wishes to our people in Nigeria, and I hope that in the few days ahead, election results would have been declared and we'll have a president to keep on going.
Well, we do pray for that, and we'll see how things go from there. Let's come back to Ghana. And indeed, that point you make about the stranglehold of the NDC and the MPP, just as we have in Nigeria, the PDP and the APC. We're hoping that some third force would be brought to bear in there. And who knows, it could happen in Ghana as well. Nigeria setting the pace as far as that is concerned. The Daily Graphic this morning, President Akufo-Addo with Naba Azoka II, overlord of the Kusang traditional area at the Jubilee House. What did that have to do with President Akufo-Addo? Boku Naba renewed commitment to lasting peace in Boku. Just last week, Friday, on my blunt thoughts, I was making that call that more had to be done. Mr. President had to be more visible. So this is good news for me. I'll be getting into details of that story. Cocoa industry under threat. Illegal miners destroy rehabilitated farms. And this morning we were talking about farms, cassava farms and others in the Bono East region being lost. There's also Nigeria elections will be credible, INEC boss insists. Reverend Wengam takes over as 7th Assemblies of God General Superintendent. And then mining firms should undertake legacy projects, NAELP coordinator. Let's get into the stories. The country's cocoa industry is facing one of its biggest threats ever as illegal gold miners continue a major onslaught on cocoa farms, including those recently rehabilitated under a national program. The Ghana Cocoa Board had warned that the industry could head for a disaster if the illegal activities were not checked. Raising the alarm, the executive director of the Cocoa Health and Extension Services, Reverend Edwin Afari, said the National Cocoa Rehabilitation Program being undertaken by Cocoa Board at a cost of about 4.8 billion Ghana cedis was under severe threat from illegal mining, that is, galamsey activities. Recently, quoting him, he says, I was around the Boinso area in the Awin municipality of the Western region, and for about 36.5 hectares that we did, they had cut down all of them for galamsey. He told journalists in Cape Coast last Friday on the margins of a ceremony to award 15 visually impaired cocoa farmers from the Central Western and Brong Ahafo. I don't know why they're still using Brong Ahafo, because now we have Bono East, Bono and Ahafo regions for their immense contributions to cocoa production. Just to give a bit of a breakdown, on September 24, 2020, President Akufo-Addo launched the National Cocoa Rehabilitation Program at Seshuriose in the Western North region with the objective of rehabilitating farms affected by the cocoa swollen shoot virus disease, which had become unproductive. Again, under the program, Cocoa Board bears the full cost of the 2-year-long rehabilitation process. In addition, Cocoa Board gives 1,000 Ghana cedis per hectare to each farmer whose farm is affected by the disease, while in the case of tenancy, both the affected tenant farmers and their landowners are compensated. You're very passionate, I know, about matters to do with especially farming, especially cocoa farming. What's your take on this latest trend?
Well, the threat is real. I don't even know whether it is a threat at this stage. I think that
it's a full-blown attack.
Exactly. And again, for me, I am not surprised because the approach that was used was certainly not going to work. Very limited farmer education. And remember that if a hectare of cocoa farm is being cut and you say you give 1,000 cedis to the farmer, is it to the caretaker or to the landowner? Remember, when you go to many of these places, the actual owner of the cocoa farm is not the person who is in the village where the farm is. It's either the person is in a neighboring town or a neighboring city, and the caretaker survives on the farm, whether it is the plantain that is in the farm or the cassava that is in the farm or whatever it is. So if you are giving 1,000 to the farmer, is it to the caretaker or to the landlord? That's number one. Number two is that we've gotten ourselves into a situation as a country where everyone is looking for quick money, whether it is the politician who is well paid or the civil servant who is well paid. Everyone is looking for money. And evidence of that is how we abused COVID money, for example. So if you go and you say you are rehabilitating these 4 acres of this cocoa farm and you are providing 4,000 cedis, just 4,000 cedis to the landlord or the caretaker, and then the person realizes that, oh, my land is actually endowed with gold. And even on 1 hectare alone, even if I were to give it out, I could make 200,000 cedis versus the 1,000 cedis that the government is providing. And remember, the cocoa that is being planted will take me the next 3, 4, 5 years before I start harvesting. And even that, it will be gradual. Every year, I'll make like maybe 3,000 or 4,000. And here's the case, within a matter of 6 months, I can make 200,000. The politician would do it. So why would you expect that the farmer would not do it? The politician who is supposed to provide leadership and provide inspiration, guidance, live that moral, upright life in terms of, look, let's preserve our environment for the future, wouldn't do that, wants everything today. And so if the farmers are doing it, for me, it is not surprising. So for me, right from the word go, it was not going to be sustainable. I have family members, I have friends who are still in cocoa farms, and they would say, look, this thing the government is doing is a joke. It is not going to work. It is certainly not going to work. Even if the land is not endowed with gold, it is not going to work because there's no sensitization, no public education. They've been living in cocoa farms for the last, 50, 60 years, nothing. A young man comes to do galamsey over some 6 months or less period. The person is building in Kumasi or building in Accra. And you want them to still stay there in the cocoa farm and say, oh, we want to support Ghana. When the money that is coming from cocoa is being abused and looted by the authorities at the helm, and they will continue to stay poor. I think that is the challenge, and we need to accept it. Otherwise, we will not go anywhere as a country.
Let's go to page 16 now, move away from cocoa farming and galamsey, and there is a threat there, an existential threat, which also borders on terrorism. But tied to that, we have another story as well that has got all of us with our hearts in our mouths. It has to do with the Boku development. Recently, there was a Treponi issue as well, where 5 people, were affected, a soldier, 4 others, and about 4 people killed. But what are the details here? The president, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, and the overlord of the Kusaug traditional area, Naba Abugrago Azoka II, have renewed their commitment to amicably resolve the security situation in Boku. Now, at a meeting at the Jubilee House last Friday, President Akufo-Addo said ensuring peace in Boku remained a priority of the government. Hence, the relevant authorities would continue to work closely with the Kusaug Traditional Authority towards achieving that objective, he reiterated. Now, the president further reiterated assurances that any development likely to undermine the peace and security of the area would be swiftly dealt with in accordance with the laws of the state. He expressed appreciation to the Boku Naba for the leadership shown in the prevailing impasse and assured him of the government's unwavering commitment to ensuring lasting peace to the Boku enclave. Your take, like I was sharing with you, I was calling on Mr. President just last Friday saying that a lot more had to be done because if this gets out of hand, we'll all suffer. We don't want to feed into the terrorist threat and all of that. Today, we hear that some action has been taken, some interactions have been had with the overlord, and there is some sort of path. But has enough been done still? And what more do you see should be done? Now, I do accept, let me issue this disclaimer for you, that you are from that area and you know the history of the place. The last time we had an interaction, some people felt that maybe you were leading in one direction, a discussion we had. So putting it into context, what do you think should be the way forward?
Well, thank you, Ben. And I really admire the way you are able to pronounce Kusag. You know, I've listened to a lot of presenters and they butcher the name. And Kusag is what represents the entirety of the area occupied by the Kusasis in the Upper East region. So the 6 political districts of Zebila, Binduri, Boku Central, Boku Municipal, Garu, Timpani, and which other one? I think is that's it. The 6 areas: Garu, Timpani, Pusiga, Boku Central, Binduri, and Zebila. And I think that yes, I'm a Kusasi. I'm from the area. And what we all yearning for is peace. I think what is happening is really needless. So far, a lot of people have died. Young people left their families, wives and children. And it is absolutely needless. I really don't know why people would let us get ourselves into this kind of protracted situation, which is not just affecting lives, but affecting property, affecting development in the area. And people are suffering and still are adamant to adopt peace processes. I think that the government of the day could have done certain things quite swiftly to prevent the conflict from getting to where it has gotten to in terms of duration and in terms of the casualties and in terms of the impact and also in terms of the level of resources that the state has had to spend in maintaining peace in the area. But I must say that over the period, President Akufo-Addo himself has really demonstrated what has to be done in terms of being fair on the side of truth, on the side of justice, and on the side of fairness. And I'm not surprised that the president once again invited the overlord of the area to come for dialogue. And you and I, the president certainly knows a lot more when it comes to security and all of that than you and I.
Right.
And because he gets daily briefings.
Exactly. He's supposed to get a daily briefing if that happens, yes, that we are not privy to.
Exactly. So the other day I made the point that, look, the overlord of the area, Naba Asigri Abugurago Azoka II, I know him, and this is somebody who really, by his nature, by his demeanor, by his pronouncement, by his conduct, is a peaceful person. And in fact, it got to a point where the youth, the Kusasi youth, started even agitating that, look, every day he is talking about peace, 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 and they cannot sit down and be killed, they cannot sit down and be... And he continuously says, look, the development of the area cannot be fostered if we are in this kind of situation. Let us allow peace to prevail. And I made the point that, look, but for his insistence, you would have seen the conflict escalate to the other districts because all those places are Kusasi areas. And we would have had a situation where people would say, look, given this, what is happening in Boku, if you are this tribe or that ethnic group in our area, we want you out and so on. But consistently, he's maintained that, look, this conflict is within the municipality, within the capital of the Kusag area. Please don't allow it to escalate, and let's do everything possible to bring peace to the area. And I think that the government is really doing quite a good job at this stage by enforcing the law. I have always said what will bring the situation under control is law enforcement. Make sure that the country's laws are being enforced. Whether that would affect the Kusasis or that would affect the Mamprisis or whichever ethnic group, let the laws work. Once the law is working and there is rule of law, it doesn't matter. And like I said, I'm a Kusasi. If it is my people who are on the other side of the law, let the law deal with them. If it is the Mamprisis who are, on the other side of the law, let the law deal with them. And that is the only way we can bring peace to the area. But at the beginning, it was almost like, oh, let us do this. And it was because of politics. And that is why, for me, the NDC as a political party I think their silence on this matter has been so loud. They are not in power, but we all know there are political dynamics to the issues in Boko. And you would have expected that.
So are you also feeding into that rhetoric that the Kusasis tend to opt for the NDC, the Mampusis tend to opt for the MPP? I mean, people have debunked that. Others have said that is the reality. The likes of Kano, retired Festus Abwaje, have said that that is the reality. But some have also said it's not really the picture. Are you feeding into that as well?
Absolutely not. I think those who make that claim may not know the facts. Look, as we sit right now, the entire Upper East region has 15 parliamentary seats. The MPP won only one seat in the Upper East region. That seat came from the Kusasi area.
Right.
The person who won that seat, Honorable Abanga Abdullah, is 100% Kusasi. Mother, father is a Kusasi. Today, he is a deputy minister for Works and Housing. The deputy minister for Information is a Kusasi. The Upper East regional minister himself is a Kusasi. Are they saying that President Akufo-Addo appointed persons who are NDC people to his ministerial portfolios? That is absolutely not the case. You go to Nalerugu, which is the capital of the Mampusis. The seat there was occupied by Haji Alima Mahama. Today, that seat is occupied by the NDC. Is it the case that if Mampusis were MPP, why is it that in their traditional capital is the NDC that won the seat there? And how come, Akufo-Addo's appointees, majority of them are Kusasis? How come the only seat from Upper East is a Kusasi person? So I think people are still relating to history. At a time when maybe Rawlings came and, things had to be done properly, and so the Kusasis then ended up supporting the Rawlings regime. But things have changed since 1992, like I've given you. But for the Kusasi area, giving the MPP the single seat that they have from Upper East, MPP would not have had any seat from Upper East. Why would the regional minister for the entire region, made up of Bulses, Frafres, Kasines, Kusasis, Mosis, Houses, Bimobes, and Buzanges, how come the regional minister is a Kusasi? I don't think that is really the case. If you go to Ashanti region, you have people who vote MPP, those who vote NDC. People are still relating to history. Other than that, I don't see the reality in what they say. But I'm saying that, look, whether we like it or not, there is politics in the whole thing, where political parties would want to exploit the situation. And one would have expected the NDC, the leadership of the NDC, to at least say, look, we want peace in Baku, let peace prevail, the law must work, and so on and so forth. But so far, it's been silence. And I think people say the same thing about His Excellency, the Vice President, who is a Mampusi. And people would have been expecting him to say more, to be more visible in this matter. But people are not also seeing that from the Vice President. And some of us with open minds, we defend him. You go to places and they say, oh, the Vice President is behind it because it is his people. And I say, look, I know the Vice President, absolutely, this is not something that I believe he's happy about. But people say, then why is he quiet about the situation? So I think we need to hear more from the Vice President on this matter, because whether he likes it or not, he is from the area, he is a Mampusi, and historically, his father has played a role in this conflict in terms of commissions, and he testified and making certain statements. And so people expect to hear from the Vice President, people expect to hear from the NDC, and at the end of the day, as I said, it's basically the law that must work. As a country, we cannot be seen to be failing to enforce law in just a single district, and then say that when, it escalates to other districts, we will then be able to contain it. So kudos to the government, kudos to the president. I think the president has been firm and resilient in saying, I am a lawyer. I know the antecedents to this conflict.
Right.
I know the Supreme Court ruling, and I know the implications of it. And I must commend him at this stage and his government for ensuring that the laws are working. And that is the only way that we can bring peace to Boko. It is because of the government's action. That is why you haven't heard any explosions in Boko again. Right. Other than that, there was certainly going to be explosions once that person was purportedly ensconced in Nalerugu. And therefore, we need to commend the government and demand that more actions be taken. And I appeal to my people in Boko, whether Kusasis or Mampusis, young people, look, we have long lives ahead of us. Let us focus on development rather than killing each other. Let us focus on, peace so that our territory can develop it's a territory with a lot of commercial value. And why do we put it in this state? I think that let's dialogue. Let's put the guns aside. Let's dialogue. Think about progress. Think about development. That is what will help us, and not killing each other.
You can get, for those of you watching us, you can get more details on the Nigerian elections on page 20 of the Daily Graphic. Nigeria elections will be credible, INEC boss says so. And on the back page, unfortunately, Adriana Pip Kotoko, my own Kotoko, to advance out of the MTN FA Cup round of 16. And Faisal through to round of 8. That's how it went down. But let's quickly go through the rest of the papers. Yagbongra, man of peace, development-oriented. President eulogizes late paramount chief of Gonja traditional area. There's also first results expected from tight Nigeria election this week. Government committed to deepening decentralization in Ghana, that's according to Dan Boche, and admissions under computerized system increase SHS quota to 40%, that's according to Child Rights International, that's what they're advocating. And then ECG faces court action for felling trees as Chado residents fume at destruction of Green Ghana project. Let me bring you those stories very quickly, starting with page 3. And the East La Burma Valley Residents Association in Accra on Thursday gave the ECG 1-week ultimatum to replant the 50 trees it felled in the area without recourse to its environmental impact. According to the association, the decision to cut down the trees defeated the government's Green Ghana project and called on the ECG to take steps to restore those trees. I find it interesting because while government is greening, we don't know the numbers in terms of how many survive. But there is the attempt. The ECG, per the story, is not in compliance. I find it difficult to realize that a state institution, so to speak, would be diametrically opposed in terms of its work to a government's drive. But let me just add the second story so you reflect on them together. A child-centered organization, Child Rights International, is advocating an increase in the 30% quota system to 40% reserved for students of local communities in senior high school admissions under the new computerized system. That's the CSSPS. An increase to 40% quota, the organization said, would be beneficial and a bold step to fully scale up access to quality education to a majority of Ghanaian children of school age. However, the organization said if government, quote, aims to implement and have a comprehensive policy that would address the needs of rural children, then the quota system should be reviewed and, if possible, pegged at 40% to give more children the opportunity to have access to secondary school. Quick thoughts on these two?
Well, I think it's a good call. I'm not privy to the analysis of the free SHS placements and how students from certain communities are impacted. But of course, there are kids in particular areas who may not even prefer the school that is in their community. I mean, if as I did, I completed Kwadwo Betiako JHS or JSS at that time. I believe if there was a secondary school there, maybe that wouldn't have been my preference, even though I ended up also going to Tapa Secondary School, which was the nearest secondary school in the area. But of course, we've gotten to a point where if they are privy to the data and realizes that some people's aren't getting placed because they were not even placed in the schools within their localities, then of course that is a good call. But I think that that whole idea of having even 30% at this stage allocated to kids from localities where secondary schools are is a good move. And I don't know, like I said, because I'm not privy to the data, I don't know if that 30% is not really enough to serve the interest of persons from certain areas. Because as I said, somebody may finish school here, but the person wants to go to school in Cape Coast or in Takrady or in Tamale. And so it is the data that will speak for it, and I believe that they are speaking on the basis of the data. On the ECG and the Green Ghana project issue, perhaps in my view, it is about initiatives that are done unplanned. So it's about we plant trees, and so just plant trees, just plant them anywhere. But of course, if it is gotten to a point where a certain tree is standing would not make electricity transmission possible, what do? Do we keep the tree and be in darkness? Or do we remove that tree, perhaps plant it at where it ought to be, and then get our electricity supply on. And I think that is it. I think it's a case of lack of planning in executing that initiative. Because yes, we all need the greens, we all need the trees everywhere.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that you just can plant a tree anywhere. I think it must be something that is planned. And because of that lack of planning, that's why I'm sure this is happening.
Let's wrap with the next few stories. Lassa fever kills one. That's on page 6 of the Daily Guide newspaper. It actually has the story here. Let me just get to it. And the Ghana Health Service has confirmed an outbreak of Lassa fever in the country, recording 1 death. According to the GHS, it received notification of 2 confirmed Lassa fever cases from the Noguchi Memorial Institute for Medical Research on February 24, 2023. One of the cases was a 40-year-old trader who fell unwell for a period of about 2 weeks. And we know that the other person actually came into contact with this person. Lassa fever, very similar to Ebola in terms of its symptoms and effects, deadly. And we really have to curb that. IMF makes debt resolution case for Ghana. The story is on page 9. And I don't know whether you heard the German ambassador, going out and saying, Massa, very uncharacteristic of him. But look, you have all these ministers in there. Your country has more ministers than my country. Cut your coats according to your cloth and all of that. I found that interesting because usually they would stay away from this kind of rhetoric. You remember the former UK High Commissioner and comments that she made and the backlash from the IGP, among others. So I found that to be interesting. Then the Finder newspaper, free SHS, 91% of qualified students successfully placed. That's according to the Education Ministry. We saw the about 165,000, some of them thronging the Nat Hall. And then the Finder again, is Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta to blame? That is the question there. After that, maybe I'll just take a look at some portion of the publisher newspaper, the Ghanaian publisher, to wrap. But your quick reflections on this. That's how we'll wrap the news review.
Yeah, I've been following the comments by the German ambassador. Of course, we know that diplomats sometimes would hedge on certain matters. But of course, at this stage, we are talking about a situation that also impacts his country. Because the government, our government has appealed to Germany to speak to China on debt forgiveness. We are appealing to the wealthy nations to either cancel some of the debts or amend the conditions of our debt in terms of when we can pay them. Indeed, what is happening is that this government is piling a lot of problems for future generations. I think all they care about is how do we solve our problems today? Whatever the problems of the future generations would be, we don't really care about it. And that's really unfortunate. Because all that is happening, defer the debt payment. For who to come and pay? If it is in the next 20 years, is it still President Akufo-Addo and Ofori-Atta and the others who are going to pay this? They are basically saying that, look, you push the burden to the future generations of this country. Meanwhile, not much is being done to cushion the future burden of the young generations, our children, and maybe even if not us, our children. So that for me is really unfortunate. And I can understand why the German ambassador will come out this way, because you are asking them to do something. And he says, look, your ministers, Ghana's ministers, is more than my country's ministers. So it means that you have the money. Look, we have been asking you to deal with, reducing the expenditure, reducing the cost of running government, and you are adamant. And then you are saying, give me money. How do I get convinced to do that? So I can understand the ambassador. And it is not just him. I think that the diplomatic community in Ghana, that is a collective position. Yes, they cannot come out to say it perhaps the way the German ambassador has been speaking of late, but that is a collective position. They all know how things are being mismanaged. And the earlier the government amends its ways, the better for our country, the better for our relations with these diplomatic, the foreign entities that are here, and the better for future generations. I think that is what I would say.
Thank you, Suleimana, for always doing us the honors. It's been a beautiful Monday, partly thanks to you, and we wish you the very best of the day, sir.
Thank you very much. Have a great week.
Thank you. And of course, we'll continue praying that everything goes well in sister country, Nigeria. But before we go, Sanitation Minister, that's in the publisher newspaper. Sanitation Minister urges Jospon Group and others to invest in recycling of used vehicles. You can catch stories of that story in that newspaper. It's in the publisher newspaper. There's also manager of Daughters of Glorious Jesus picks up NDC nomination forms. And that's his photo right there. Mr. Olympio, I believe. Yeah, he has picked up Kwame Olympio, manager of award-winning gospel group Daughters of Glorious Jesus, on Wednesday, 22nd February 2023, picked his forms to contest the upcoming parliamentary primaries for Trobu constituency on the ticket of the National Democratic Congress. Well, those are some of the stories there. On that note, we'd like to thank you so much for having joined us. Sports is up next, but just to let you know, this segment has been brought to you by Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. Later on, we'll be telling you a bit more about them, or we might as well go ahead. They are offering free prostate screening and free female fertility screening. Locate them in Accra Spintex opposite the Shell signboard, Kumasi Kronum Abuehia, behind the Angel Educational Complex, Takrade Anaji State Tema Community 22, Techiman Hanswa and Esiama Enzima. Call 0244 867 068 or 0274 234 321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease. But only the beginning of sports, and we'll definitely be telling you about how Manchester United, glory Manchester United, went on to beat Newcastle, which was very feisty. They had the larger chunk of possession, but they lost the Carabao Cup. And now Manchester United, for the 6th record time, has won the Carabao Cup. I know the Chelsea folk are bleeding, especially having bought the entire all the players in the world and yet not being able to get much rolling. They lost by 2 goals to nothing. We'll bring you the scoop on all of that in sports. Do stay.